The football season is finally here, and I, for one, am absolutely thrilled about that. Today, we're bringing you four guys that we think are going to do really well in week one, and four of them that may be better off left on your bench.
It's about that time.
Stone on Sports.
How's it going, everybody? You are tuned in to Stoned on Sports Fantasy Football Edition. My name is Matt. Got the stellar co-host Kyle here today with me. And that's right. It is finally here, the opening game of the NFL season. And that means it is fantasy football time. The drafts are over. It's time to get down to brass tacks. Kyle, how the hell you doing, man?
Doing great. Excited as all get out with football starting tonight. Give us a like and subscribe. We're going to bring you lots of content. You know, our job is to make it easy for you. We'll do the research each week, look at the matchups, and we'll determine which players should have a negative or positive outcome each week. You know, we'll be here every Thursday for that. Starts and sits at 7 p.m. Eastern. Every Tuesday for waivers, 7 p.m. Well, I guess it'll be 8 p.m. Eastern for the next couple weeks while we're still doing fantasy baseball as well. But, you know, start sits are rough. It's week one. You know, we have to go off some stuff from last year, but we think we got some pretty good ideas with some game scripts and what might happen. And, you know, some advice: don't get cute with week one. You start your studs, right? We're not going to I don't think we're talking about any really studs in this group of players anyway. So, but some are very, very good. Let's get her started. First guy we're going to talk about is running back. Ken Walker III is healthy, and that means plenty of opportunities. Last year in 14 fully healthy games, he averaged 17 touches a game. That's huge in fantasy. Why is Walker a great start this week, Matt?
Well, number one, it's the matchup. He's at home against the Broncos. Seattle is a 6-point favorite on DK Sportsbook, and we've got a game total of 41.5. His Vegas rushing prop is 66.5 yards. Now, on the surface, that doesn't seem really high, but at the same time, Ken Walker is a dude that really hits the hole hard and knows how to run. And anyone that saw him run in college, especially against Michigan, maybe still has some nightmares about that.
We're here.
Yes. The Seahawks brought in a new offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, and he brings a different offensive philosophy than what we've had in years past in Seattle. He was the OC at the University of Washington who, you know, got smoked by Michigan. This is going to open things up, and I think it's really going to benefit the run game. He's expressed a desire to be more physical. And look, Walker should get volume against a run defense that allowed a league-high 5 yards per carry last season and the third most rushing yards. And the Seahawks, look, their offensive line wasn't the greatest run blocking line last year. As a matter of fact, they were bottom third according to PFF, but they made some moves in free agency and in the draft to really help shore that up. The big thing lingering, Zach Charbonnet, look, he's obviously going to get some work, but Walker outrushed him 2-1 last season. And I think you're going to see a similar split this year. Charbonnet may get a little more work, but it's likely going to be passing down work. I'm expecting the Seahawks to win this game relatively easily. I think Walker is going to be out there to ice the game away. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with 20 touches or more. I think he's going to push for 100 yards. I think he's got a great chance to find the end zone, and I think he is going to end up this week as an RB1.
Yeah, I think so too. Charbonnet's been dealing with some injuries during the spring, but he looks to be fully healthy now. But I really like Walker. I drafted him in one league for sure.
So the last time Jared Goff faced his former team in the Rams, he threw for 277 and a touchdown in a Lions playoff victory. We got a rematch week one. Kyle, why are you running Jared Goff out there?
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. First, I'm fucking pissed. I'm upset that he doesn't get more respect. All right. He's drafting QB 15 on NFFC the last few weeks. That's 118 overall. You know, you got QBs such as Jordan Love, Brock Purdy. I don't think they should be ranked higher than them. Yeah, Love and Purdy finished QB 6 and QB 7 respectively, but Goff was right there at number 7. Goff had the second most passing yards last year. The Lions paid their core this year. I think they drafted well. OC Ben Johnson is back. This will be their third year together, Johnson and Goff. I love that. And they added some defensive players through free agency, through the draft, to shore up that porous pass defense. And I believe that will also have a huge impact on Goff and the offense in regards to, field position. They routinely got, started out behind. They were just such a powerful offense, they could still march down the field and score. I think it's going to be the year of the Lion. A few reasons to start Goff this week versus the Ram. First, there's no place like Dome for Goff. Guy is amazing at home at Ford Field. In his past 21 games, he's scored at least 20 fantasy points 16 times, including 10 times with at least 25 points. The Lions play 14 of their first 15 games indoors this season. That's going to be huge for Goff and the Lions. Thank you, NFL schedule makers. Second, we got another revenge game, like Matt mentioned, for Goff versus the Rams, the team that he led to a Super Bowl, didn't win, and they didn't want him anymore. And, we flip-flop Stafford for him. Third, the Rams defense. They've lost all-pro Aaron Donald. Ernest Jones got traded, surprisingly. Their lead tackler and team captain got traded last week. And maybe more importantly, their defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, left to go be a head coach in Atlanta. They have a ton of young guys. Didn't you say they have, 10
they had like five undrafted free agents on defense this year.
Yeah, they've completely, rebuilt their secondary in the offseason. This is going to be their first game together. Last season, the Rams allowed the fourth most fantasy points per game to QBs. And according to NFL's or PFF's strength of schedule tool, this is the 7th best QB matchup of the week for Goff. You got two high-powered offenses facing off. This is a big reason that the game total of 52 is the highest on the slate in week 1. Goff is in play as a QB1, sure, but I think he's a top 5 quarterback in week 1.
I accept that.
Heck yeah. This Bucs wide receiver is back in the slot and should see plenty of space to operate this week, with Mike Evans being Washington's top priority. Matt, how much will Chris Godwin feast on the Commanders secondary?
Oh, God, they were so bad. This is an absolutely gorgeous matchup against the Commies. That defense allowed 7.7 yards per attempt in last season, third most in the league, and 4,627 passing yards, the most. And you're right, dude. He's moving back to the slot. That's where he had most of his success. Washington allowed over 14 fantasy points per game to the slot last season. And guess what? They didn't really do jack shit to help shore up the back end of that defense. I think they're going to be able to adapt. He's going to be able to attack that D in the short to intermediate part of the field, but he's also a sneaky deep threat. Their new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, spent time with the Rams, and he was the OC at the University of Kentucky. And everyone has kind of been talking about who's going to get that Cooper Kupp role, right? Because you've got that Sean McVay influence. I think it's going to be Chris Godwin. I think, we talked earlier in the offseason, I think he's going to lead the team in targets and yards. I think he lines up spectacularly to have a career year. He should see a good amount of target volume. He had the second highest target total of his career last season with 130. There is a slight concern about the weather. There's some rain and storms forecasted around game time, but at the same time, that's 4 days away. And at least here in Indianapolis, our weather forecasters have a hard enough time telling me what's going to happen, 4 or 5 hours from now. Mike Evans is still there. He's going to command targets, but he's also going to get the most attention from the secondary. And look, I'm not a huge fan of Baker Mayfield, but he showed last season he can support 2 fantasy viable wide receivers. I don't necessarily know that Godwin is going to finish as a wide receiver 1 this week, but I am very confident he can turn in a top 20 finish at minimum with a great chance of being a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, for sure. Their top cornerback there in Washington is a guy named Brandon Juice. They drafted him in 21, I think. He's Canadian, actually. He's their top guy. They did draft Mikey Sanders still. I mean, I do love him. He's a baller and can make plays and very intuitive and a very damn smart player. But, you know, it's going to be his first game in the NFL. So the speed's going to be an issue for him as well. So, yeah, I love Godwin this week, too. I think I have him in a couple leagues. I'm starting him in both for sure.
He is. And as good as Mikey Sanders still is, like, he's not a lockdown cover guy. He is a playmaker.
No. Yes. Yep. For sure. But the secondary is bad last year, and on paper it looks just as bad. So
yes. So this nearly 30-year-old running back finished last season with 5 straight 100-yard games, including the playoffs. Why is Aaron Jones a must start this week?
I really like him. Yeah, he moved from the Packers to the Minnesota in the offseason. He had 11 games with the Packers, dealt with injuries as Aaron Jones tends to do. He had 600 yards on the ground, a healthy 4.6 yards per carry, and just 2 touchdowns. So you're right. He was really hot there at the end of the year. He finished RB 37 due to missing so much time, but he was RB 26 in points per game, so almost 10 ahead. And his PFF rush grade was pretty good, 81.5. It was the 11th best grade in the league among 38 running backs with 140 carries. Also among those running backs, he was 11th in yards per attempt, 8th in yards after contact per attempt. I love that at 3.16. And he had the 14th best pass blocking grade among those running backs. That's going to keep him on the field a lot more. When Aaron Jones is healthy, he's a starter in all leagues, right? And I think this is a positive game script against the Giants, no matter what. If the Vikings are playing with a lead, then Jones should get plenty of carries. If Minnesota is trailing, then Jones should get plenty of work in the passing game as well. The Giants did add the all-star edge rusher there, Brian Burns, but their defense still projects to be one of the worst in football against the run. Last year, New York allowed the 3rd most rushing yards to opposing running backs last season and allowed 14 running backs to score at least 13.9 fantasy PPR points. And the quarterback situation there with Sam Darnold under center, I'm Kevin O'Connell. I'm going to ease him into that first regular season game running that offense. I think that means a lot of handoffs for Jones, a lot of, multiple screens, dump offs, as Jones is still an awesome playmaker in this league, even at 30 years old. You know, as a fantasy owner, you think about starting him or not. You know, Minnesota believes in him. They gave him a 1-year, fully $7 million, fully guaranteed $7 million contract. You know, as a fantasy owner, you might as well take the Mustang out for a spin instead of just waxing it all day in the garage with a diaper. Am I right? I mean, play him. I expect Jones to have another 1,000-yard campaign this season. Hopefully those that drafted him, myself included, in one league, you must know that you're hoping him to play at least, 13 games. Hell, I'd be happy with 12 games played if he did, because I think you can get some good production out of him in those games. During his heyday with the Packers, I mean, this dude was a weekly must start, right? And while he's not the player.
All right.
Our value as high as your RB2 this week.
So we got Ice Cold Jones in the chat. Which 2 wide receivers to start? Jalen Waddle, I assume Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk, or Michael Pittman? This one to me is this is a no-brainer. Okay. I'm going with Waddle and Smith. Ayuk, yep. I don't really want to start anybody against that Jets secondary. And nope. Michael Pittman, while he had some success last year, we also know that Gardner Minshew is a much better thrower of the football than what Anthony Richardson is. I want to see a little bit out of those 2 before I really am just locking him in my lineup. But yeah, like I said, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's the first 2 options there.
Yeah, and that short sample size that Pittman and AR played together, it wasn't horrible as well. He'll be a nice floor. He'll get his 8 or 9 targets, I think, I would assume. But ceiling-wise, points-wise, you want to win. I'm thinking Waddle and Devonta Smith for sure.
Appreciate you stopping by, man. If you haven't already, drop that sub for us. Hit that like button. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday for football at 8 p.m., at least for the next couple of weeks. We'll be switching back over to 7 o'clock. And then we're here at noon on Sundays for those last-minute lineup decisions.
Yeah, I was going to say too, Tinker Time. We're also going to talk about the weather as well for you guys, so you're prepared on that. Whether you're using it for your regular fantasy leagues or DFS as well, very important stuff. So are we done with starts? That's all of them, right? Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Let's give you 4 sits here. First guy's a running back, Rhamondre Stevenson. While he could offer a decent floor due to volume, this very low projected game total doesn't inspire much fantasy ceiling. Why is Stevenson a sit for you this week?
Look, the first thing for me, Rhamondre is a fine running back, right? He's got some talent. He's got some ability, but this is an absolutely shitty Patriots team going on the road against the Bengals. Their offense should be slightly improved over last year, but that bar is incredibly low based on how things went last season. And look, that Bengals rush defense was ass last year, but it should be better, especially considering the draft capital they used to improve the defensive line. Right now, the Bengals are 8.5-point favorites at home. And while Jacoby Brissett is a competent QB, I have very little hope for that offense. Bengals might win this one by 17 points. Given the quality differential between these two teams, Rhamondre's best opportunity to score fantasy points is likely going to be in the first half and maybe a little bit of the second quarter. They brought in Antonio Gibson to handle passing down work, and really that's going to hurt because Stevenson has seen 139 targets over the past 2 years. Now, he will still see some targets on early downs, if New England's throwing on first or second down, but that volume is going to be greatly diminished. He will still see the lion's share of rush attempts, though. And look, being fair, that Pats line was decent at run blocking, and improved QB play should help to open things up for the run game. But really, I could see this game getting out of hand for the Patriots relatively quickly, and that's going to severely diminish any opportunity Stevenson has to score points. Chances are you drafted him as your RB2, and you may have to start him because of that. I completely understand. But you want to keep your expectations very low for this week. There's a good chance he finishes outside the top 20 at the position. And really, in my mind, it's going to come down to whether or not he can score a touchdown. If he scores a touchdown, maybe he can sneak into the top 20. If they keep him out of the end zone, I could very easily see this being a game where he has, 10 rushes for 45 yards and maybe 2 grabs for another 15. That's not going to help anybody.
No, that's rough. And no one knows what we're really going to have with the Patriots offense this year. You're going to have a time. I think there will be weeks where Rhamondre will be somebody we'll talk about starting, in some matchups as well. It's going to happen. But this week is not that week.
No, it certainly is not. And really, with the first week of the season, you're kind of feeling around in the dark. It's like, the time you get your first piece of ass. Yeah, you know what the end goal is, but maybe you don't necessarily know what you're really doing.
Good stuff, Matt. Good stuff.
Yes. The Bears might be the most hyped team this offseason, but one of their wide receivers has landed on Kyle's sit list, not to be confused with his shit list. Why do you recommend keeping DJ Moore? Well, maybe not necessarily on the bench, but tempering those expectations.
Definitely lower your expectations, and it has a huge deal to be. It's a cornerback matchup downgrade for me. L'Jarius Sneed is no longer on the Chiefs anymore. He is in Tennessee, and his head is going to be parked so far up DJ Moore's ass on Sunday. It's not going to go well. I don't think. He had a fantastic season last year. Don't get me wrong. He set career highs in receptions with 96 yards at over 1,308 touchdowns. Excuse me. And he finished wide receiver 6 in PPR and 9th in points per game. The other problem is last year Moore was targeted 136 times. The next Bears wide receiver that was targeted was Darnell Mooney with 61. So a bunch less, but things are different this year, right? Moore's fantasy value has, dropped due to an increase in his team's receiving talent, including free agent Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, Cole Kmet's still there. They drafted rookie Rome Odunze, and I even expect DeAndre Swift to see a bunch of targets this year. Like we started saying, lower your expectations. I think it's just an okay matchup this week versus a great or even good matchup. Look, it's week one. Okay. I said at the top of the show, you're going to start you guys you drafted. You most likely drafted DJ Moore in the 3rd round, probably. He could have a good game. It depends. He gets loose and breaks one. He could finish top 10 receiver. It could happen. You'll most likely scream at me and, tell me I'm wrong. And how could you have done that to me? But there's a lot of unknown at play here. They have a rookie QB. They have a rebuilt wide receiver core. They have a new backfield leader. They have a new OC. We'll see. I do know that the pass funnel defense of the Titans is a thing of the past. You just got to lower your expectations, especially if he's your wide receiver 1. You might be in trouble this week.
Well. Look who has made an appearance. Blue Yays is back.
Sweet.
What's going on, Blue? It's been a minute.
Fine.
We appreciate you coming by. Hey, we're ready for some pigskin.
Yep.
Hell
We're
yes.
reunited. We're reunited, and it feels so good to talk about football again, guys. Appreciate you hopping in there. Appreciate you hopping in there, Blue Yays. All right. I was just giving some shit about this quarterback earlier when I was talking about Goff. According to PFF's strength of schedule tool, the 49ers have the worst QB matchup of the week. The Jets allowed the 2nd fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks last season. Why is Brock Purdy upset this week? Other than that's about it.
Well,
that's all you need to tell me. Jets.
I didn't need PFF to tell me this is a shitty matchup.
Right.
I figured that out all on my own. Let me get my notes up here. Look, I get the games at home. I don't care. The Jets as a team had the best coverage grade last season, and there's no real reason to expect that to change at all this year. They were 4th in the NFL, allowing just 6.1 yards per attempt. They had the 3rd fewest passing yards allowed, just under 3,200 yards. The 3rd fewest passing touchdowns allowed, under 20. And the 2nd fewest passing first downs, just 150. And they were tied for the fewest pass plays of 20-plus yards, just 39, all season long. And they have a pretty damn good pass rush. And though the 49ers have a solid line, they're not the greatest in pass pro. And look, Brock Purdy is not a statue, but nobody is going to confuse him with Lamar Jackson. And the way to beat the Jets defense is on the ground, which is going to limit his already low upside. He does have outstanding weapons across all skill positions that can score from anywhere on the field. And in order for him to have a QB1 finish, he's likely going to need a big play or 3 from that group. I just have a hard time seeing that happen. I think a reasonable expectation is maybe he finishes somewhere in the QB 15 to 18 range, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up with, maybe 200 yards and a touchdown, getting you 12 points. I think as somebody who rosters Brock Purdy in a super flex league as my QB2, if he can get me 12 points this week, I'm taking it. And I don't necessarily know I'm going to be happy with it, but just considering the matchup and everything else that's going on there, Brandon Ayuk hasn't played at all this preseason, and it is a tall task to ask him to go out there and be as effective as we know he can be against this secondary. Like, I don't see it. And look, none of this, I'm not splitting the atom here, right? I'm not telling anybody anything they already don't know. But at the same time, look, it's our first in-season show, and I have to come up with a sit, and my ass is going to take the low-hanging fruit and say, Brock Purdy, put his ass on the bench.
It's an easy one as well. And you mentioned Ayuk, was fighting for a contract. Their left tackle, Trent Williams, was not playing and fighting for, they haven't played. You don't have a left tackle, you ain't doing anything. So, but he's got his money too. They're there, but they haven't practiced together. They haven't done training camp really together. They've been sitting out. Yeah, they're the 49ers. Yeah, they're coached well and have a great offensive scheme, and they have the best fantasy football player when healthy on the planet. But yeah, Brock Purdy's also a sit for me this week.
So we got Blue Jays with a question. His third wide receiver, Jaden Reed, Cortland Sutton, Christian Watson, Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, which I don't even know if Josh Downs is going to play because he's dealing with, I think it was a high ankle sprain.
High ankle sprain. Yeah, I think he'll be out a minute later. I guess it's one of the two Packers for me, Reed or Seawat.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Christian Watson. I'm going to take the upside there. They think they figured out what's going on with his hamstring issues during the offseason. He had something like 20% more muscle mass in one leg over the other, and that was causing some kind of imbalance. I don't pretend to be any kind of medical professional, but I'm going to go with Christian Watson.
All right. One more chat here. Let's
From
see.
Twitch.
Yobi, I am Adam. Hey, what's up? Thanks for joining us there. Should I start Godwin or Zay this week? The weather's looking really bad for the game that kicks off in 15 minutes.
I think regardless of that weather, I'm going to go with Godwin. The strength of the Chiefs
100%.
secondary is on the outside, and that's where Lamar Jackson struggles throwing the most, is to the outside. I'm going to go with Godwin, and I have absolutely no hesitation on my part with that either.
Yep, I know. I think, Baltimore's more of a run-first team with Lamar. Now they got Derrick Henry. The receiving core is not great pass-catching-wise. It's, Mark Andrews, really. So I agree with Matt. Godwin all the way against a very weak, inexperienced, no-name secondary in Washington. Love it.
Oh, all right. Our last sit. This Panthers running back should get a ton of work early in the season, but despite that volume, faces a tough divisional road matchup right out of the gate. Why are you down on Chuba Hubbard?
Listen, here's the deal. Okay, I sound like Joe Biden. He's definitely going to have some usable weeks here. Unfortunately, this just may not be one of them. He was RB 27 in PPR last year, 26 in standard. He played all 17 games. Pretty durable guy. Rushed for over 900 yards, just 5 touchdowns. Did have 44 targets through the air, caught 39 of them for over 200 yards. So I still have concerns with the offense, even with a new head coach and scheme and OC and everything. I just don't believe with how bad we saw Bryce Young was last year. I just don't think it can be fixed in one offseason with a new coach and a new offense. We'll see. Like Matt said, Hubbard should get plenty of touches with Jonathan Brooks shelved there with that knee injury for the first few weeks. But as Matt mentioned, this is a tough matchup against the Saints on the road. You could see the Panthers really struggle to move the ball on the ground if the Saints are as good as they were last year. The Saints allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to the running back position last season, and their defense allowed just 2 running backs to beat them for more than 13.9 points at home last season. If you got to start him, I consider him a flex at best in most leagues, and that's just based on volume alone. Miles Sanders is still there. Yeah, he's not as favored, but he's still there, healthy. He's number 2 on the depth chart. Maybe he looks a little better this year and could steal at least a few carries away from Chuba. For the, I'm not starting him in September. Why the hell did I draft him, folks? I'm not sure to tell you. That's your problem. Maybe don't target a less than stellar fantasy running back on a team with a new head coach and a young QB. Terrible. Just terrible. And the Saints, as good as their run defense was overall, it's just extra stingy versus the run at home. Hubbard's never been a very intriguing fantasy option. Trust me on this one. Start Hubbard with caution. If you're going to do it, cross your fingers. That's all I got to say.
So
or something could go crazy and he could run and break one open and go for 100 and score a touchdown, and I'll look like an ass. Those things
I think he's, and just thinking, we'll say the first half of the season, I think he's a viable flex option with a very limited upside.
Yep.
So if you had to choose between Chuba Hubbard and Jerome Ford going up against Dallas, who are you taking?
I think I would still go with Ford. While the Dallas defense was spectacular in a lot of ways last year, their Achilles heel was their run defense. We'll see. I would go with Ford. They're going to be leaning on him a lot as well. Chubb's out. We'll see what the rapist can do this year. We'll see. I'd roll with Ford in week 1 over Chuba all day.
Okay, I can dig it.
Yeah.
Just curious. I think they're two very similar players, at least in terms of their fantasy value.
Sure. This week, Ford. All right, this kicks off in 10 minutes. The game does. We'll get the heck out of here. Give us a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We will be back Sunday, noon Eastern for Tinker Time. This is an unscripted show, no notes. We cover start-sit questions before your lineups lock, any injuries, any weather issues, questions about trades, and any other roster management stuff. Shoot them in the chat. We'll be here to answer them. We pride ourselves on answering every question every week. So if the chat is slow, we'll make a DFS lineup if you guys want to jump on for you guys to follow, win some extra money. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Hell
Let's
yes.
see.
I can't wait to burn through my bankroll this year.
Yes. Well, I believe you had a positive, you were a winner in 2023 on the year,
sir.
if I recall.
Yeah, I
So
got that
overall on your-
1099.
Yeah. Gotta love it. But it should be fun Sunday. Everybody enjoy the game. Stay stoned, everyone. Have a great night.
See you, folks. Good luck.